Cast from paradise, humanity's first lesson was not survival, but sin. This is the saga of Cain and Abel, born under the shadow of a curse. When God accepted one brother's sacrifice and rejected the other's, jealousy became a predator. It led to the first crime, the first betrayal, the first murder. This is the moment the bond of brotherhood was broken forever. This is the origin of all human violence. The world was no longer the Garden of Eden. The gates of paradise were sealed, guarded by a flashing sword, and Adam and Eve were left to face a new reality, one defined by sweat, sorrow, and toil. The earth itself was cursed, yielding thorns and thistles, making every breath a struggle. It was into this harsh new world that the first children were born. Adam knew his wife, Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to their first son, Cain. In him, Eve saw a triumph of life over loss, declaring, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." He was the inheritor of the promise, the one meant to begin again. After Cain came his brother, Abel. As the boys grew, their natures diverged, reflecting the two great struggles of the new world. Cain was the tiller of the ground, strong and intense, battling the cursed soil with relentless effort. He put his hands into the rough, unforgiving earth, forcing it to yield its harvest. His days were spent in grueling labor, a direct fulfillment of the curse laid upon his father. Abel, however, was a keeper of sheep, a shepherd. His life was quieter, more reflective. He wandered the vast new landscapes, guiding his flocks to fresh pasture. He lived close to the animals, knowing each one, and he watched the silent skies, a man of contemplation rather than conquest. Though they shared the same parents and the same harsh reality, they held fundamentally different relationships with the world and with God. As time passed, the brothers understood their duty to the Creator, to offer a portion of their labor and their lives as an act of worship. It became a day of presentation, a moment of profound significance. Cain, the farmer, came first. He brought an offering of the fruit of the ground. He brought his harvest, the very things he had worked so hard to produce, placing them before the divine presence. His presentation was one of duty, a display of his effort and his output. Then came Abel, the shepherd. Abel approached with reverence and intention. He brought not just any animal, but the fat portions of the firstborn of his flock, the choicest, the very best, the life-giving essence of his labors. This was a sacrifice that cost him dearly, an offering rooted not just in duty, but in devotion. And the text is stark in its judgment. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. The divine acceptance was not arbitrary. It was a reflection of the heart, the intent, and the quality of the devotion. Abel had given his best, acknowledging God's sovereignty over life itself. Cain had offered what was merely available, a symbol of his toil, but perhaps lacking the humility and true sacrificial heart of his brother. Cain's response to this rejection was immediate and profound. His face fell. He was overwhelmed by a burning resentment and a fierce, isolating anger. His brow furrowed, his gaze fixed on the ground he so intensely struggled to master. The rejection was not just of his gift, but of him. In this intense, dark silence, the voice of the Creator broke through, a solemn and sorrowful caution to the firstborn. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? God saw the violence churning inside Cain and offered him a path back. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. It was a stark, almost palpable warning. God revealed the destructive nature of sin, personifying it as a predatory beast lurking just outside the door of Cain's heart, ready to consume him. He gave Cain the knowledge, the power, and the absolute responsibility to choose mastery over malice. The decision, as always, was his alone. But Cain allowed the venom of jealousy to take root, deeper than the warning. He refused to look up. He refused to master the beast. The rage and resentment festered, turning Cain's thoughts from self-control to destructive action. He turned his gaze away from the heavens and focused it entirely on the object of his envy, his brother. One day, Cain spoke to Abel, perhaps with a deceptive calm that masked the storm within. "Let's go out to the field," he said. Abel, innocent and trusting, followed his brother into the isolation of the open countryside. There, under the vast, silent sky, Cain finally succumbed to the power of the crouching sin. The malice took over. Cain attacked his brother Abel and murdered him. The first human life was violently extinguished by the hands of the firstborn. The blood of the shepherd soaked into the very earth that the farmer so aggressively worked. The silence that followed was deafening, the quiet of a world profoundly and irrevocably broken by the echo of violence. Once again, the voice of the Creator broke the silence of the earth, but this time the tone was one of sorrowful judgment. "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain, hardened by his sin and attempting to hide his guilt behind defiance, delivered his infamous reply, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" This was the height of human denial, not only denying the crime, but denying the very responsibility of community and compassion. But God knew. "What have you done?" he demanded. "Listen! Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. The very earth, which had struggled under Adam's curse, now cried out with the anguish of Abel's spilled life." The sentence was severe and perfectly tailored to Cain's sin. He had struck his brother in the field, so he was cursed away from the ground he cherished. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. The curse was a profound loss of purpose. The farmer would never successfully farm again. He would wander, eternally severed from the very source of his identity and labor. Cain's response was not remorse for the murder, but fear for his own survival. "My punishment is more than I can bear," he cried out. "Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." In a final act of paradoxical mercy and justice, God provided a measure of protection for the murderer. The Creator declared, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." And with that pronouncement, the Lord put a mark on Cain to ensure that no one who found him would strike him down. This mark was not a tattoo or a symbol of disgrace, but a divine sign of prohibition, a perpetual reminder of the crime, yet a shield against immediate revenge. The Mark of Cain symbolized that vengeance belonged to God alone. Cain then departed from the presence of the Lord. He went out, not just from the presence of his family, but from the spiritual closeness to the divine, settling in the land of Nod, meaning wandering, which lay east of Eden. He lived out his curse, marrying, having children, and even founding a city, attempting to build stability where God had decreed restlessness. But the stain of that first act, the sin of jealousy, resentment, and murder, would remain an indelible mark on the history of humanity. the enduring shadow cast by the loss of paradise.